I don't know how many times I've read Think and Grow Rich. I lost count a long time ago. But every time I read it, every time I study it, I see something I didn't see before. I see some hidden principles, some hidden ideas. What I want to share with you today is the secret power of the pyramid. Now, I'm not talking about some mystical kind of pyramid power, like I'm not suggesting you go sleep in a pyramid or put a bunch of pyramids around your house or anything like that. No, these are a pyramid of some principles that will create incredible power. The first chapter in Think and Grow Rich, after the introduction, is the very first principle. And it's the principle that Napoleon Hill calls desire. That's chapter 2, Think and Grow Rich. Now, he talks about desire and how important it is. In fact, he says desire is the beginning of all achievement. Desire is the beginning of all achievement. Now, he says, and he makes this reference countless times throughout the book, he defines it and describes it as a white-hot desire. White-hot. The first couple of times I read that, I had to go look up. I wanted to know what white-hot meant. I mean, I knew kind of intellectually what it meant, but I wanted a deeper understanding of it. When he wrote the book in 1937, or when he came out with the book in 1937, many people in the world were employed in these large factories where these big kilns and these big fires burned. And a hot fire, the hottest fire, is a fire that the color of it is white hot. So what he was trying to communicate in words of the day was you needed to have the hottest desire that you could possibly create. That's the first fundamental principle in whatever it is you want to do in becoming successful, is that white hot desire. Then you go to the next chapter and you find the second principle. He calls it faith. A lot of times will use the word belief. Belief and faith are cousins, first cousins. They basically mean the same thing. Now, if you look at Hill's book, Hill says faith is the most powerful force on earth. And you find references to that throughout all of the ancient wisdom. If you read the Christian Bible, there's a passage in there about the faith just the size of a mustard seed, which is one of the smallest seeds. Faith the size of a mustard seed is enough to move mountains. That was the example used there. That's a very, very powerful principle if that little bit of faith has that much power. And in fact, it does. You can do amazing things if you have belief, if you have faith. Hill says that those two principles must be present to have any type of success at all. You're not likely to move forward without both of those. Sometimes now, we won't begin with the white-hot desire. There's been many times when I started things that I had a desire, but it wasn't necessarily white-hot. I'm going to show you in a minute how you take a normal desire and you turn it into a white-hot desire. So we've got our desire. We begin to work on our faith and our belief, and we must do that before we can go to principle number 3, which is the principle of action. Now, Hill calls it decision. That's the name of the chapter. Decision. You must have faith before you act. In fact, James Allen, who wrote As a Man Thinketh, says, belief precedes all action. You're not likely to take action if you have no belief, no faith. You're not likely to make the decision if you have no belief, you have no faith. So that's why these follow in the order that they do, not just in Hill's book, but in the order of principles. When we go after something, this is how we must develop it. If you start trying to take action before desire, before faith are there, then you're not going to act very long. In fact, your actions will be very weak. That you won't have a full commitment. You won't have that decision that Hill talks about having. So you start with the white-hot desire, you create a strong faith and belief, you then begin to take action. And what happens then is the action feeds the desire. So if we started with desire and we went to then create a strong faith and a strong belief. That fed our psyche in order to take action, make the decision. And I should do this in another color. That action then feeds this desire. What does that do? That's how you create a white-hot desire. That action creates more desire. That desire then feeds my belief and my faith. And that does what? Creates more action. That pyramid power, that principle there is so amazingly effective. You know, when you start looking at action, Napoleon Hill says they studied 25,000 failures, in fact, 25,000 failures. And he says at the top of the list, the reasons for failure was a lack of decision, a lack of action. That's how important that is. But to get there, to do that, you got to start with this. So if you've got some idea or you've got something that you know needs to be done and you're just sitting there in the days, and this is not a time when you want to be frozen with any kind of fear or inertia or inaction. This is the time to be in action. This is the time of opportunity. These economic times that we're in now, the wealthiest people in the world wait for times like this. This is when they tremendously increase their wealth because there are so many opportunities out there now. So what you want to do is you want to get into massive action, not just action, massive action. And to do that, you must get this cycle started. Now, I'll tell you that once you get to this point, you can fool yourself. You can trick yourself. Because what's important, remember this principle. You might have learned this principle in science class. It's Newton's law of motion. And Newton says that a body at rest tends to remain at rest. A body in motion tends to remain in motion. As long as you have inertia, you're likely to continue with that inertia. But if you can create any kind of motion, any kind of action at all, you're likely to continue in action. So what I do is trick myself into getting into some kind of action. When I have a desire, I've created some faith. Now I say, what can I do? What kind of action can I take? And even if it's a small step, I go back to that principle of Newton. A body in motion tends to remain in motion. So what I want to do is do anything toward my goal that will get me in motion, that will cause me to begin moving toward it. By doing that, I feed that desire, which feeds that faith, creates more action, creates more desire. Now, you're looking at this and you're going, that's pretty simple, Vic. You probably already knew this, right? That's true. I was walking the other day with my neighbor, and we have some great walks in the afternoon. And we cover a lot of ground. We cover a lot of different subjects. And as we were winding up one day, we were talking about something similar to this. And, his comment was, we all know what to do. And that's true, we do. Most of us know what we need to do. It's doing it. And that's the question we ask ourselves is, why can't I do what I know I need to do? These principles are simple. We've probably learned them many, many, many times. Why can't we just exercise these simple principles? Well, there are many reasons for that. Sometimes it's a self-esteem issue. Sometimes we have this sense of unworthiness of being successful. We don't believe that we deserve success. And that's going to affect all of these elements. It's certainly going to affect our faith and belief. It's going to affect the action that we take. When we conquer the way that we process failure, it'll be very easy to do the principles. When we grow that self-esteem, it'll be very easy to do the principles.